Hello, listeners. This is Vivek Mehrotra, and you are listening to the CHRO Mindset Podcast.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the season two of the CHRO Mindset Podcast. After an incredible first session, we are back with more dynamic conversations and actionable insights. In today's episode, we'll be diving into competency assessments and training as a domain, and we are thrilled to welcome Mr. Vivek Mehrotra. So let's dive in. Vivek Mehrotra is a veteran HR leader with over 4 decades of experience across multiple industries, including pharma, telecom, retail, e-commerce, BFSI, and food tech. Currently, he serves as the CEO of Assesspro, specializing in competency assessment and training, helping organizations build high performing teams. He has held key leadership roles at Flipkart and Zomato, driving transformative HR strategies that fostered growth and innovation. A prolific author, Vivek has published 6 books on topics such as communication, motivation, human psychology, and customer service, further solidifying his reputation as a thought leader in the HR domain. Vivek, thanks for taking out time to speak with us today and welcome to the CHRO Mindset Podcast. Let's get started with our first icebreaker question. What sparked your interest in competency assessments as a tool for talent management?
Well, I think this was way back in 2009. During my tenure with Reliance Retail, I was first introduced to the concept of competency assessment. At that time, the organized retail, I should say, was emerging in India, and there was hardly any company which was already there. So we have people who have joined from variety of industries like telecom, FMCG, and many other industries. And what we were looking, because Reliance was expanding very fast and we were bringing lots of new formats. So what we were looking forward to, that we wanted that we should have people who can be positioned to those new formats which were coming. So basically we were looking forward to both career progression as well as succession planning. And that's where we initiated a project called Bhavishya, which was very
Okay.
aptly named for all these interventions. And there, in fact, we started with, I think, cluster heads. These were the middle line managers. But then we have extended this to right from supervisory level to the store manager to the cluster head to the business leaders. Virtually all across Reliance Retail, we have conducted these assessment centers. And that has really deepened my understanding about this entire intervention competency assessments. And then after I left Reliance and I joined Flipkart and Jana Finance Bank, I continued this with me. Just to share with you, like I remember when we were launching, like Jana Small Finance Bank was basically Jana Lakshmi Financial Services. It was a microfinance company.
Hmm.
And when we were becoming the Jana Small Finance Bank, my chairman asked me, Vivek, I need every single person to be promoted internally. Now, that was
Hmm.
a Herculean task because we had 300 plus branch managers of our microfinance operation. And we were to find out 20 branch heads from that. So, virtually, we have conducted in 2 months the entire 300 people we have assessed and came out with a list of those 20 hypos who became the first branch managers of Janai Small Finance Bank. And that's where, when this post COVID, I thought of starting my own venture. I started this company called Assesspro.
Great. Thank you. Love that background to start off with. Now, let's get into the core topic that we have for today's discussion, which is maximizing talent potential through competency assessments. Uh, so, how do competency assessments influence different stages of the employee life cycle, right from onboarding to development? Please walk us through that.
See, yes, you rightly said that this is one single intervention which is playing a very important role all across the employee life cycles, right from onboarding till exit. For example, in onboarding, it helps in identifying the strength of the new hire, the potential that he or she has, and also the initial task that need to be given and also not to be given. Because this thing that the initial setbacks or the rejections are very, very detrimental to the career success. So This, if we have done the competency assessment properly and we know the strength of the person, we can assign those tasks wherein he succeeds and therefore becomes productive much faster. Then, as employee progresses, the competency assessment helps in pinpointing the what you call skills that he or she needs to build on. So it's a basically overall development, what we call it as an individual development plan. The personalized development plan can be made basis the information that we have gathered through competency assessment. Then it
Great.
does not stop here. When it comes to performance management, competency assessment provides a very objective parameters for assessing the performance. Like all other traditional performance management basically considers only the outcomes, the results. But here, what competency assessment measures is the behaviors as well as the skill that are responsible for producing those results. So it's provide a very objective and a very consistent performance management system. Moving forward, I think succession planning and career progression, I already shared with you my experience of Reliance that we have very successfully implemented this. So it helps in not only identifying the high pause, but also to develop them, help them develop. So it helps you because we know the specific competency that need to be developed in a particular person in future. So therefore, we can create those development plan, which are again very individualistic. And then I think sometime like what we have observed, like in my this thing, when we were doing this kind of competency assessment in my earlier companies, we found that somehow some people are having a potential or a particular skill for which they were never hired, but they
Mm.
have. So during the assessment, when you come to know about these, you can even reassign the assignments. Like you can reassign them to a different job, different role, so that they can show their true potential. So it's like say, and since we talked about the exit, again in exit also, if we have the data from the competency assessment, and we also had the data with the what you call exit interviews, and if we put together, what you will come to know that people who are exiting, what kind of competencies they are taking away with them, the people who are leaving. And also there are competencies which people who are exiting they were lacking. Now, if we have this kind of information, what we can do is we can tweak our hiring as well as training strategies. So, to me, this looks like that this is the one single intervention which plays an important role right from onboarding till exit.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for covering all the nuances. Now, Vivek sir, there are a lot of traditional methods also to do these evaluations. So, in your experience, what advantages do competency assessments offer over the conventional evaluation methods?
Good question. And in fact, as we discussed, that all the traditional measurement or the traditional performance management measures, they basically focus on the outcome or the results. Whereas, as against this, competency assessment does what? It measures basically the behaviors and the skills. So, what we call is like, say, I'm sure we call it as the lag measures. Those are the results or the outcomes. Whereas, as against this, the competency assessment measures the lead measures, the behavior skills that are responsible for producing those results. Because it is important what is achieved, but it is equally important how it is achieved.
Hmm.
So therefore, like say, if we create a performance management system basis the competency assessment, it provides a very objective parameters. It is very consistent in
Hmm.
providing the measurement. Otherwise, like for example, results. Now, results.
Hmm.
How can we define results? Either they are poor, good, better, or excellent. There are
Hmm.
only those four criteria that comes to my mind. Whereas when
Hmm.
we come to this performance management that is based on competency assessment, it has a grading because it is based on the observable behaviors. So therefore, it can provide the actionable what you call feedback mechanism, because we have observed that person is good in this, these are his strength, these are the gaps that he or she is having in a particular skill. Based on that, if the feedback is given to the person can develop. So the focus here is on development rather than just measuring, and that is the basic difference what I feel competency assessment offers.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Thanks for that clarification, Vivek. Moving on to our next question, how can competency assessments help make the hiring process more objective and less prone to bias?
Yeah, you said it. In fact, whenever hiring comes in our mind, the first thing that comes into that is the bias. Because
Hmm.
whether it is the halo effect or horn effect to conformance bias, all sorts of biases they comes into the picture when we talk about hiring.
Hmm.
And I'll just like your question reminded me of a incident which happened.
Hmm.
This was the one of our client that was an engineering company,
Hmm.
very niche product, and they were the market leaders in India, and they are marketing their product globally. So they
Okay.
were looking for a VP supply chain. So
Mm-hmm.
they must have seen several candidates, and then they have finalized one person. And CEO was very gung ho that this is the man I was looking for.
Hmm.
But somehow the CHRO was not in sync. Now,
Okay.
CHRO was like of the opinion that candidate may not be a culture fit. Now, she did not have this guts to say it to the CEO. So she took away and she approached us that, will you like to do, or please do a third party evaluation and give us your report. Acha, she never told these things that I have discussed these things. These things have come later. She did not say,
Hmm.
she just said that we have a candidate and we would like you to evaluate. So we said,
Okay.
okay, we'll do it. And we administered Hogan. Then I have asked one of my very senior assessors. She's a doctorate in psychology with 20 years of experience in assessment. So I deputed her, and she has provided, like, she has evaluated, and based on his Hogan report and her observation, we gave a report that, I mean, his candidate is no doubt good, but somehow there is, he may not be a culture fit, because we have done all our homework. We have asked this thing that what you are looking from this position, what kind of culture you have, vagara, vagara, everything we have already taken beforehand. So when she has provided the report, you won't believe, we were summoned by the CEO, both of us. And in that
Okay.
meeting, instead of asking us that why have you said, or why have you given this kind of reports, why are you rejecting this candidate, etc., he was still trying to convince us that why they should take this candidate. Meaning
Okay.
was, he was so much biased that despite having a third party report, despite spending money on that, he is still wedded with his idea that this candidate is good. So this is the
Hmm.
height of bias which I am saying.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
biases, like, I mean, that really there is. And that's where the difference between when you do a competency based hiring, this provides a very, very structured method, because you are trying to assess specific competencies that are required in a person. And when you are trying to do that, you will go only in that, you will only check those things rather than doing here and there. I'll share with you another example. Like, say, it's
Sure.
not only the bias that comes into the picture, many a time the kind of question that we ask. And I remember my Flipkart HR days, because I used to represent, like, there it used to be a panel of 3% minimum for any
Hmm.
mid to senior level position. So I
Hmm.
used to represent HR, then there is a line manager, and then there is a subject matter expert. So
Hmm.
minimum 3% has to be there in the panel, and then only this interview is taken. And after
Hmm.
that, there is an integration and other things.
Hmm.
So I remember in those days, like, say, very seasoned people who were there, and I'm not criticizing them, but the kind of question they used to ask is a hypothetical.
Hmm.
Now, what would you do if you are in that situation? What would you do? Now, the moment you ask a hypothetical question, you get
Hmm.
hypothetical answer, because you only
Absolutely.
ask the person what would you do, and he will tell. And basically, they what they were like. Say, I realized later that they have that conformance bias. They were looking a particular answer to be given by the candidate, and if they
Hmm.
have given, it's a conformance to their idea, and therefore he is the best person. So that's where, like say, and it was very difficult for me to tell to those very senior leaders that, sir, this is not the way. And just to share with you that when we go for this competency based assessment or especially hiring, we follow a technique. And that technique is called as a STAR. It is a acronym, it is STAR, wherein we
Hmm.
also give a situation to the candidate. But this
Hmm.
situation is about past. And
Okay.
the whole premise here is of this STAR technique is that the past behavior predicts future performance. So if the candidate has done something worthwhile or maybe a similar nature in the past, there are chances that he will produce similar result in the future. So therefore, what we ask is like, say, we give them, okay, tell me a time when you were, and we give them a situation. After that situation, when the person tells the situation, we ask, okay, so what was the task that you carried out, or you were given, or you were assigned in that situation? Once he talks
Hmm.
about that, then we go, okay, so what kind of action that you have taken, what activities you have undertaken, etc., etc. And the last is, so therefore, what was the result? Now, when you take them systematically like this, and when you ask those competency based questions, which were very, very specific to a particular competency, then there is no chance of having any bias. Because whatever person will say, he has to say something which he has already done, or he has to refuse that, sorry, I have not been in that situation. Because the
Hmm.
moment he will or she will try to fudge, there will be an incoherence between the words and the body language. And a trained SSS can find out. So believe me,
Okay.
this is to me, competency assessment is the ultimate way for hiring decisions without having any biases.
Great. Great. Awesome. Thanks for those insights. Vivek, let's keep moving. And now let's talk about making sure that all these competency assessments converge at a point so that the organization benefits from it, which leads me to my next question. How do you ensure that the competencies being assessed are closely aligned with the organization's overarching goals?
Very good question. In fact, that exactly is the existence for my organization.
Absolutely.
Because if we do not deliver these results, probably we will not be doing our job.
Very true.
So, what we do at Assesspro, we first and the foremost thing that once we get the assignment, we ask for the vision and mission statement of the company. That's where we start
Hmm.
as to what exactly the company is looking forward to.
Hmm.
Then what we do is we ask for an interaction with the, if not CEO, at least N minus one. So CHRO, COO, or maybe the senior leaders, whomever they appoint. And
Hmm.
what we would like to know from them is that what kind of short term and the long term goals organization has.
Hmm.
Because to
Hmm.
me, I mean, those are the first thing, because that exactly. And we start with that. Once we
Hmm.
say, we try to find out that, okay, as per you, what are the specific competencies that are required for uh, these people to achieve your short term and long term goal? Like, what are your expectations?
Hmm.
Once this is there, this is the first step. Then the second step, may we dig down, we go to the level of department heads and the team leads. Therein, what we go into the job, specific job, and their like say roles, wherein we would like to know that what is the JD. So we study the JD. Then what are the KRA, KPIs that company has. After studying those, we come out with a kind of competency framework, because now that we know what exactly the company is looking forward to, what exactly is people are expected to deliver, etc., etc. So once you analyze all these things, we come out with a competency framework wherein we divide it into two. One is the core competencies. Core competency, I mean, is like say which everybody in the organization needs. For example, it could be collaboration, it could be innovation, it could be customer focus, depending upon the organization need. And then there are job specific competencies which every single role requires.
Hmm.
So once you have taken this thing and you create this kind of detailed this thing, what we come out with the competency framework or the competencies Most of the time it matches. Believe me, like so far, whatever clientele we have, and when we have presented this, they find that this is okay. And by the way, I would like to add one more thing. What we have observed in our experience is that the same competency may mean different things to the different organizations. For example,
Okay.
innovation. Now, innovation in a startup and innovation in an established company are two different things.
Hmm.
A startup, what they would expect is disruptive thinking. Innovation means disruptive. It has to be disruptive, nothing routine.
Right.
It should be
Right.
risk-taking abilities, etc., etc. Means they are looking today. Whereas an extremely established company, they would look for the competencies in a way like process re-engineering. They would like that the technology to be added, new technology is to be brought, process improvement, etc., etc. So both the places innovation is required,
Hmm.
but it is different for different contexts. So we have to even look into that.
Hmm.
And what we do is we also go into the market and we trying to compare it with the industry benchmark as well. So once we do this kind of elaborate, and this is what we do every single time when we go to a client or we do our intervention. And so far, our experience is that it always matches with the company's overarching goals.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for that. Let's keep moving. Now let's talk about uh, an extremely critical step for organizations, and I'm talking about succession planning for future leaders, right? So, in your opinion, how valuable are competency assessments when it comes to identifying future leaders for succession planning?
So good, as I said, like say we briefly discussed about the role of competency assessment in succession planning.
Yeah.
But uh, to me, this is again, like as I said earlier, also that this is the objective way of doing things.
Hmm.
Because I mean, don't take me otherwise. Succession
Hmm.
planning means that this person is my person, should be succeeded. I mean, those kind. But when it comes to means competency based assessment, what it does is it helps not only in spotting the right candidate, but it
Hmm.
also helps him develop. Now, I'll
Hmm.
qualify this thing. When we are talking about the identifying the person, it looks into
Hmm.
the behavior and the skill, whether this person has a behavior skill necessary for the next role. So
Hmm.
therefore, what we do is instead of going into the details like tenure or the performance, his experience, what we look into this, that does he have those kind of competencies like decision making,
Hmm.
uh, or maybe strategic thinking. So those kind, like say here, there's a different set of competencies that we look into a person, and if a person qualifies for that, he is identified as a high pause. Now, once
Hmm.
a person is identified as a high pause, the next step is to develop him because he
Hmm.
may not be ready. See, otherwise, if he was ready, he would have been a leader. So now that we are looking for future, we need to develop. And just
Hmm.
to share with you again my experience from the Reliance retail, which what we have done, that after having that bhavishya, wherein we have identified the hypos, we have
Hmm.
created another project called Work Smart. In this Work Smart, what we have done is we have broken down every single this competency into small skills,
Hmm.
and then we have created the role specific, job specific, specific training modules. Can you believe there were 168 training modules just for store operations?
Hmm.
Because at every level this was changing. So there were multiple what you call training modules for the same competency also or same skill also, depending upon the level. Then similarly we have done it like we created a complete competency framework, and then we have created modules based on that for every single role across Reliance Retail. So the point is like say it not only helps in identifying the hypos but also in developing them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And since we are talking on succession planning, I have a different take, which I would like to share. I'm sure listener will also find it interesting. And This comes like from my background in army. Incidentally, I have never worked in army, but I spent a lot of time in NCC, and therefore I am very well versed with the army. And this kind of succession planning, which I am going to suggest, I hope we have time.
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead.
So, so let me just share with you some background. The smallest unit of Indian Army is a section which is having 10 soldiers, and it is headed by a Havaldar.
Okay.
Then in this, there is a position called 2IC.
Hmm.
That 2IC means second in command. Then as it moves, there are three sections in a platoon, which is of 30 people. Now here again, each section 10% has a 2IC, section 2IC. Then 30 people, there is a platoon 2IC who takes care of platoon 2IC. Then there is another level is a company, which is around 30 to, I mean, 3 to 4 platoons, means roughly around 100 to 120 people. And this is basically commanded by a major or a captain. And there are 10 sections. So each section has a 2IC. Then each platoon 3 to 4, each platoon 2IC, and then there is a company 2IC. Now, army may, you can imagine that why they have kept this kind of hierarchy, because if something happens to the leader or the commander, then imagine who will manage the rest of the crew. So there it is a must. But
Hmm.
why I am giving you this corollary in corporate sector is one of the major issue, I'm sure you are aware of this, that when a person leaves, it takes minimum 2 to 3 months. And if he's a senior person, hiring managers take 3 months minimum to fill the vacancy.
Very true.
And I'm being conservative. Then it takes another 3 months for the person to join because of notice period and all. All senior positions will have 3 months minimum notice period. Now, after he joins, it takes at least 3 to 6 months to come for the person to come on the speed at which the earlier person was performing. So, if not 12 months, at least there is a lag of 6 to 8 months. Am I correct?
Hmm.
So,
Very true. Yeah.
if now this is the period where the performance suffers.
Hmm.
Now, if we have done this competency assessment, and this is what I always recommend to the company, that can we go down to the department heads? Can we go down to the team leads? Because they are important person. And if we have this data from the competency assessment, we know who are the people who are second in command. Now, like army where they need to know who's 2IC, here you need not to tell the 2IC. What you can do is, without any showing, only the leader knows that who is 2IC in my team. And this leader provides him additional, maybe he can delegate his own job certain, he can assign some additional responsibilities, etc., just to develop him. So by, if at all he leaves, now he is not preparing his succession, or he's not that, but the thing is, if he leaves, there is somebody who can take care of the job 60 to 80%. And you need not to take, you can immediately promote him. And then this person who is internal, his loyalty to the company is better, his understanding of the company is better, he will be much more productive from the day one rather than bringing a person from outside. So that's what my theory of succession planning.
Okay. That was super insightful and a very different take on
Thank
from
you.
what I've usually heard. So thanks for that. Um,
Thank you.
Now let's talk about a very difficult situation that most of the HR leaders face, and we're talking about layoffs. So in such difficult situations, can competency assessments play a role in making these decisions fairer and more strategic? Your thoughts on that, please.
I think you have asked a question which is a burning topic these days, because everywhere we are hearing the
Yeah,
news of layoffs, and that too not in hundreds, in thousands.
yeah.
You are right. So I think, uh, as I said, that this has a role in all the kind of, like, say, entire life cycle, and layoff is also a kind of exit. So I would like to say that yes, it has a very important role. But before that, I'll just qualify. if you see what is happening around is the layoffs are being done only for two reasons.
Hmm.
One, that is overstaffing. The second is the financial pressure either on top line or on the bottom line.
Hmm.
Those are the two basic reasons. Now, ultimately, both the reasons they affect the bottom line, and therefore, company in order to make the stakeholders and their investors happy, they have to lay off because ultimately it is the bottom line which matters.
Yeah.
Now, you take the example of what Meta did, or maybe the Twitter did. They were overstaffed, which was very
Hmm.
clear.
Hmm.
If you see financial, I think your Amazon, Google, or maybe what you call this one, Microsoft, they all were like having a financial pressure and therefore they have taken a decision. Now, when it comes to India, like say, it's not only happening to these big tech companies, even in India, if we see Reliance always had a overstuffing.
Hmm.
Then Baiju, I think
Hmm.
it's a classic case of financial pressure because they have acquired Akash and whatnot. Like they were going into such a big fan, this thing to have so much of business, and this had never come up to that, and therefore their bottom line was getting hurt.
Hmm.
Why I'm bringing this point? Because in my, I mean, believe me, I have worked in Zomato, Flipkart, Reliance, and everywhere I have seen this kind of layoffs. And the first thing which get hit is like say the target is find out the CTC of individuals who are having above average. First,
Hmm.
remove them.
Hmm.
So that is the first way of layoff, which I have seen at least in my experience. The second thing which comes there is subjectivity, which we are talking that this person is my person. He has or she has to be retained. You won't believe when I was in HR, people came to me and saying that we should retain this person. And when I asked them why, because his CTC is so high, they said, no, I am giving him additional responsibility. And if you see these two people job, the CTC which we were paying, this person is good enough.
Hmm.
So it is lower. So we should retain him. But
Hmm.
the moment I used to ask, does he has competency for that second role which you are assigning him? They have no answer.
Hmm.
So the point is like say why I'm discussing this because the when you take an abrupt decision that anybody who's above this CTC should be removed, layoffs are I mean most of the time it is done like that. That's what is my experience. I may be wrong. At least for all the companies, I cannot say. Wherever I have seen, I can say with confidence. So what I suggest is like, as you rightly said, that in order to make it fairer, the first thing is that we have to identify that what are those core or I would say competencies which are essential for the business to run. So if we have those people, like the first is that people who are having those competencies which are essential for running the business, they must be retained at any cost, whatever will be the CTC, because they are essential, they are required to run the business. And then, since we have done the competency assessment, we know in each department, in each team, who are the person who are having high ratings on the same competency and people who are having low rating on that same competency. So naturally, people who are at low, they can be lay off. So I am not saying lay off, you have to do
Hmm.
because I mean that is the reality. Today,
Hmm.
you know, in especially COVID has created this issue wherein every tech company or everything was online and therefore people have just gone mad and they have appointed a large number of employees to have this kind of business because that was available during COVID. Now, after COVID, when you did not require those, you are laying off.
Hmm.
So, and that is where these two things which comes into. So my suggestion, I mean, my take is on this is like, if it is done on the basis of competency assessment, I think it will be much fairer. People, it will be very transparent because people know who's going out, who's being retained. So it will be very transparent. And overall, it would help in the retention of people as well. So that's my take.
Okay. Again, a very brilliant way of getting the message across. Thanks for that answer. Uh, I think we are done with most of the
Thank you.
questions, which were to deal with the core of what we wanted to discuss. Let's now get into our rapid fire section.
Oh.
Okay, and of course, this will also cover competency assessments as a broader theme. But yeah, it should not take much time. So, first question for you: competency or experience?
Both.
Okay.
I'm sorry to say, because
No,
in these things
yeah,
there is no black and white. There are very
yeah,
lot of grays. Well,
yeah.
competency, as you know, we have discussed that competencies are basically observable behavior. We talk about the behavior and the skills, and that are
Hmm,
important.
hmm,
But when it comes to experience, that also matters. So, what we are saying is that the context, the organizational lead, the role, they decide what is more important. I would say more important. I would not say that they can replace each other. So, what we
hmm,
are saying is if it is a front end role, if it is a technical role, probably competency will weigh more. But when it comes to leadership, probably the experience required more because an experienced person knows the background. He or she knows that how to handle a complex situation because through their experience they have learned those skills. So,
hmm.
am I communicating?
I
that
heard you.
that both
Yeah.
are important. It depends upon the role, the context, and the organizational needs.
True, true. Okay, let's keep going. Online or in-person competency assessments?
You ask me, this is very close to my heart. And why I say so? Because
Yeah.
not that because we specialize at Assesspro in in-person classical assessment centers, but there is a reason for me to say that. Because
Hmm,
in classical, see, I don't know whether I mean I take you back to 5,000 year back. India is the basic premise of an all the assessment center is multiple assessors, multiple tools.
hmm,
And believe me, India we have that rich heritage that when Hanumanji was going to Lanka, he was assessed by three different individuals. First Sursa, then Samhika, and then Lankani. So I'm a very fan of Indian heritage and I believe. So point what I'm saying is that when you do this classical in person, you have these three persons who are evaluating multiple assessors, multiple tools.
hmm,
Now I understand that online has got its own advantages in terms of scalability because in person has a logistic problems. It has a issue of convenience. It provides flexibility, and above all, it is cost effective. So no doubt, people they try to prefer online. But to
hmm,
me, like online is a one-side story.
hmm,
In the sense,
hmm,
what I feel, I will key in the system, and that is what the system will analyze. What is the guarantee that I believe in those? Because human beings are very smart. They answer what they should be, not necessarily what they are. And therefore, what is fed in the computer will analyze only that. Whereas in a classical assessment, because they are answering like this, person will question. The assessors will cross question and try to understand what he really means by saying this. So to me, I mean, having said that, I would say both are important. For a technical role, again, for a frontline role, where the skills and competencies are very well defined, maybe hard skills, probably this will, the online can do better. But when it comes to behavioral or leadership, it has to be classical. There is no substitute.
understood. Understood. Thank you. Performance reviews, quarterly or annually?
You are making me or putting me in a tight spot every time. Your rapid fire is really fire. Uh, what should I say? Yeah, I think both have got again, like say, because both are having their own utility. Now, quarterly focuses on immediate, like say 3 months, it's a shorter period.
Uh,
So that focuses on development.
hmm,
Whereas the annual is basically annual means when everything is over. The
hmm,
result is over, you have given like now you have to provide him the increment or promotion, whatever is required.
hmm,
Whereas that is to me that is a kind of postmortem.
hmm,
So what I recommend personally is like that we should have both. We should have quarterly for providing developmental feedback to the person. because it's shorter duration, and this gives a chance for the development in the next of the quarters, maybe 3 quarters, 2 quarters, whatever are left. But when it comes to your increment or promotions, there you need a consistency. So there you can take care of through annual performance reviews.
Okay, makes sense. Soft skills or hard skills, which are more challenging to assess?
I think this is very clear. I mean, there's no undoubtedly it is the soft skill,
Okay,
because hard skills may you have a very clear cut parameters, like whether it is coding or it is in operating any machinery. There are very fixed norms, measurement norms, which one can. But soft skill is very like it changes with the role, it changes with the context. So soft skill undoubtedly are the very difficult.
great. One underrated competency you think everyone should have?
There I have no doubt. It is only one and one, and that is emotional intelligence. In fact, let me share with you. Long back, I think in 2012, I wrote an article in Times of India on
Hmm.
this, and the title was, I'm sure you will agree to that title, We Hire for IQ and Fire for EQ.
Wow, very
Is it or
profound.
not?
Yes.
All our assessment or hiring decisions are taken on IQ. Nobody asks EQ there. And when we ask somebody to leave, 99% cases it is EQ.
Hmm.
And one more, like say, it is a related competency, I would say, uh, which is uh, authenticity.
Okay.
Now, what I mean by authenticity is basically it is basically they are together. Like it is also like emotional intelligence. This also requires self-awareness. But two very, very important thing it needs is one is courage to speak up your mind and be
Hmm.
authentic. Like what you believe you do and what you believe you say, which
Hmm.
is required in, and that I think is missing, especially in our India country. Like I have seen that if somebody speaks the mind, he or she is considered as rebellion.
Hmm.
Whereas in Western countries, like I'm interacting here in US these days, I mean, people are very, very, I mean, open to say what they feel to
Yeah.
their higher ups, which is not a, so to me, emotional intelligence and authenticity are the two, or maybe one because they are interrelated.
Got it. Bang on. A competency, you should personally work on right now as the CEO of Assesspro.
Good question. I think you are making me think because so far I have not. I think what comes to my mind at this point is strategic foresight. I think I need to develop a bit because that is what is going to help me develop my business and to take it to the next level. Because what are the disruption going to have? What is the market trends? How the market is behaving and what kind of product that I should be launching, etc., etc. The kind of collaboration that I need to. I think that is an area, and good, you have given me a good homework. So I'll continue with that.
Okay, very, very humble of you to say that, sir. But thanks for that as well. Uh, uh, this brings me to the last question, closing question for this awesome conversation that we had today. Um, do you believe competency assessments sometimes get too much emphasis over actual job performance?
I think yes.
And the rationale behind that, please.
Yeah.
Would love to know that.
See, to me, these two things, the competency assessment and the performance management based job performance basically, should complement each other. They cannot be either or.
Hmm.
Because what is the use of having those competencies if they are not able to produce results?
Hmm.
And equally important is that how a person has achieved those results if he does not have the competencies. Means
Hmm.
there can be some kind of manipulation.
Hmm.
So what we suggest at Assesspro basically is a combination of both.
Hmm.
What we suggest is like there are two things is that we create a dashboard
Okay.
wherein we say that what we the two means bucket that we create, one is performance and another is potential. So job performance, as you said, we put as a performance. That could
Hmm.
be on balance scorecard or that could be on sales performance, depending upon whatever the company's performance parameters are there.
Yeah.
And for potential, we cover like functional skills, we cover psychometric, like say personality traits. Then we cover what you call case studies, understanding of the person, the mind, and maybe a in basket. So whatever tools that we have used for competency assessment, we put those scores in potential. And job performance is there. And then we create a kind of dashboard with a percentage. So there, like if it is for a succession planning or for a I mean, career progression, we prefer 60% potential and 40% performance. Whereas
Understood.
if it is for the, performance evaluation, maybe for increment, probably I would rate 50-50 because to me both are important.
Understood.
And again, I think you reminded me, just to share, recently we had a client wherein we have done the assessment of 600 plus field managers.
Okay.
They are the frontline managers of a company, sales organization. And we created this kind of potential, like as I said, functional scores, role play. We conducted case studies. We have the psychometric, everything. So we have created and of course, the competency based interview. So we created all the scores and then we created a potential scores.
Hmm.
And then we asked, like, say, as per our practice, I asked the CHRO that I need sales data.
Hmm.
So, so I was asked why. I said, because I want to create a dashboard and to give you a balance. No, 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 you give us the potential. That is whatever you have assessed, you give us the scores. We have
Hmm.
given the scores. Now they have simply forwarded it to the business heads. Now the moment business heads they came out with this that roughly around 5 to 10% people they say, यार इस बंदे की performance तो है ही नहीं, and you have
Hmm.
rated him so high.
Hmm.
For 5-10% they say that his rating is poor, but then his performance is very good.
Hmm.
So your intervention has not worked well.
Hmm.
And believe me, and then I asked the CHRO that I agree that confidentiality may be an issue. We are ready to sign an NDA, but we need sales data. Otherwise,
Hmm.
this is a half-baked theory. So
Hmm.
then, after all these persuasion, they provided the sales data. And as
Okay.
I said, we created these two buckets that these are the hypos wherein basis which 60% the potential and 40% sales performance. Believe me, not a single case was highlighted that they found there is a discrepancy. So that's the beauty. We need both because these both two things, they like competency assessment and the job performance, they complement each other.
Understood. I think this is the end of today's conversation, Vivek sir. Thank you so much for joining us today. I must say that competency assessment is a very niche topic, and I'm so happy we covered the A to Z of this subject today. I strongly believe our listeners would have benefited immensely from someone like you with over 4 decades of experience and someone who has pioneered all of this for major companies like Flipkart and Zomato. I don't think this can get any better than this for someone who's wanting to learn more about competency assessments. Thanks again for your time. To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the CHRO Mindset. We hope you found today's conversations on competency assessments insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review if you enjoyed the episode. I'm sure you would have. And see you in the next episode. Thanks again for your time and keep following us. Thank you.